Right, good morning everyone. Welcome to the Regulatory and Hearings Committee meeting of the 21st of August 2019. Welcome to all our online viewers, to any media, members of the public, submitters and staff and committee members. Right, I'll first do apologies. Apologies across Deputy Mayor off the list. Apologies from Councillor Southgate, Councillor Hamilton. Mangai James? For early departure, certainly. Any other apologies? Early departure for Councillor Pascoe, early departure for Councillor Bunting. All right, so with early departure for Councillor Henry, as long as we have a quorum of three, then we're okay. So I'll move that. Did you get all of those? I'll move that the apologies be received, seconded by Councillor Toomey. All those in favour, any against, that's carried. Right, confirmation of the agenda. There are no changes to the agenda. For our online viewers as well as members of the public, we are going paperless, or we're trying very hard to go paperless, so don't look at the paper in front of me. So we are looking at our devices. Most of us are on iPads. Our submission information is on there, so we will be directed to those. Committee members, in your diligent, it's slightly different from our hearings yesterday. The submissions are online. The link is on the bottom of page 5. So if you click on that, that will take you to the Your Say page. On the right, you will see a box that says search responses. You can put in the name of the submitter in there. So that's working online this time.
Sorry, Madam Chair, it's still on the actual document as well. I'm doing that just now.
Is it?
It's a little bit easier.
On the hearings?
Yeah. Just,
what page?
it's the schedule for the hearings is part of the agenda.
Pardon me, no, you're right. That's page...
Hearing schedule.
On the back page, 51.
Tab 1,
Great,
yeah.
so that is the same as yesterday. Excellent. All right, thanks for that, Councillor. Okay, so with that, I'll confirm that the agenda be received, seconded by Councillor Casson. All those in favour? Any against? That's carried. Declarations of interest. As I did previously on item 6, I'll be declaring a conflict of interest when we get to that. We will be moving into committee room 1 for that, and I'll be handing over to Deputy Chair, Councillor Toomey. Right, okay, so the business that we're here to discuss today, we're moving to page, not 17. Oh, I'm showing my paper, aren't I? Hamilton Gardens Management Report hearing. Now, just a reminder, we did have a long day yesterday, but the same process. Committee members, we are here to listen today. The committee is not delegated to deliberate. So we will be hearing from a variety of submitters today on the draft Hamilton Gardens Management Plan. Now, there are no overhead presentations that we've been alerted to yet. So. And then once we have heard from members of the public submitting on the plan, we will do our usual process. We will ask staff to come to the table. We'll have questions of this report, and then I'll do the round the table where you'll be able to give me further information, what you want to inform the deliberations report, which will come to a council meeting. Doesn't actually say in the recommendation. The 17th goes to the 17th council meeting. And for members of the audience and online, that is the 17th of September is where the decision will actually be made, not here today. Okay, so with that, I don't see our first submitter, Darren Mills, in the audience yet, no. So we'll park a space for him and go to our next submitter, Leanne and Craig Muntz from Tainui Waka Tourism and Community Development Trust. Kia ora, good morning. Right, you probably know the drill, but it's 10 minutes. If you'd like to leave a few minutes for questions for committee members, that would be really helpful. The bell will ding at 9 and the clock's up here. Okay? Ready when you are. No. There we go.
Tēnā tātou. Tuatahi mihi ana ki te rungarawa, nāna nei ngā mea katoa, kia kingi tū heitia, pōtatau te wherowhero te tuawhitu, me te kāhui araki whānui tonu pai mai re ki aia o te rā ki te wāhi ngaro, moe mai, haere, haere. Kia tātou e hui hui mai nei, tēnā tātou katoa. Just acknowledging our Creator, acknowledging our King Tuheitia today. This is his coronation day. And for those who have passed recently, and to the committee members here, and the members of the public, tēnā koutou. So my name is Leanne Muntz. It's my partner in time, Craig Muntz, and we are the Māori Regional Tourism Organisation, Tainui Tourism. So thank you again for giving us this opportunity to talk to our submission. We're going to tag team, so before I hand it over to Craig, just like to say that you've obviously got our submission there, and there's two key parts that we'd really like to emphasise, and that's basically to look at or give considerable consideration and due thought to cultural heritage and Māori cultural heritage within the draft management plan. We do have a proposed Māori cultural experience, haka, which many of you have already heard of, and if not, you will be hearing of it in the near future, hopefully. So I'll hand it over to Craig just to touch on a few more things, and we'll just tag team from here. Tēnā koutou.
Kia ora koutou. You've all read our submission, so I think it's pretty self-explanatory. Really, it's about realising the vision within the river plan. The Waikato River will be the defining heart of Hamilton. So we support that. We support the gardens, and we support the development of the gardens, but we also feel there's this very strong need for new product, for more experiences in Hamilton and in the Waikato to anchor visitation in the city and support our tourism industry. So with that in mind, our submission focuses on our experience at the gardens. Some of the key points include the reinstatement of the pedestrian bridge that was in the previous management plan, and also consideration to look at keeping the Riverside Terrace as an open space, because we feel that particular site is, I think, the only site of significance in the gardens which has a beautiful overlook of the Waikato River. So with that in mind, I mean, our vision as Tainui Waka Tourism is sharing our stories with the world. And the Hamilton Gardens has huge potential to assist and support that vision, and Hamilton's vision as well, in terms of sharing our stories with the world. So all we're asking in terms of our submission is to provide that opportunity, that platform to enhance access along the river, that platform to enhance recreation along the river, that platform to enhance the telling of the story of the river and of Hamilton through the possibility of allowing for the opportunity for other development in the gardens that leverages off the significant investment by Hamilton City in the gardens, but also provides the opportunity to grow our cultural tourism sector.
I guess last week, fortunately, I managed to catch a ride with one of the ministers who was coming down from Auckland Airport to announce 3 recipients for the PGF, and we had an hour to spare. So I said to him, okay, where would you like to go for a cup of tea, knowing where I had full mind and where to take him. He said, well, Maui Arahi, up to you. So of course, looked at the time, it was about 10 to 9, and I thought, right, did a search. Cafe was opening at 9 o'clock, so we went down to the Hamilton Gardens Cafe. I said, have you been down here before, Minister? He said, well, actually, I haven't been right around here, but I do come down here and make some announcements. And I said, okay, all right, well, we'll go in here for a cup of tea. So I managed to take him for a little bit of a walk around the place. Very proud of our Hamilton Gardens, and I think he felt that too. And so shared with him our kaupapa, which obviously he couldn't say too much, but he said, ka pai. And so, he te ngā kupu, he maha ngā whakaro. Although the words are very few, there are a lot of thoughts. So, yeah, kia ora tātou.
And just to add to that, Te Waka has prepared a briefing paper on cultural tourism in the Waikato, and the haka proposal has been ranked as the top scoring cultural tourism project in that briefing paper in terms of PGF funding. Thank you.
Kia ora, thank you. I'll just ask, before I go to Mangai James, both of your submissions, you talk about wanting to see more small event space. Are you wanting that to be actual stage? Because you talk about the Turtle Lake stage as well, saying that's not big enough. Or are you wanting to see more, are you wanting sort of more formal entertainment stage type amenity throughout the garden, or something else?
I think it's a combination of both. We've had a number of performances around the Turtle Lake, and one of the things that we've acknowledged and seen is that that stage is very small. And it's also a funny size, 7.5 metres. So it's very hard to actually build around that and keep a square shape. So there's a need, I think, for some development in terms of formal performance areas, but more importantly, when we're looking at the design of the gardens, factoring in within the design itself, the opportunity for performance spaces to be accommodated. They don't have to be large performance spaces, but just when those gardens are designed, just to allow some provision and thought behind, okay, if we have this beautiful garden here, how can we leverage off that in terms of a performance space? And that's in terms of maybe platforms for staging, but also seating. Some of those gardens have very limited seating opportunities, and we think with a bit more consideration around that event space and event requirements, then we could end up with a win-win situation. A beautiful garden that can also provide greater support for small, more intimate events.
Okay, thank you. Mangai James.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Kia korua, nā rangatira I runga I tēnei te kaupapa Māori whakaro e tāpoi, tēnei te mihi atu ki a koe te katoa. Nā mihi mō, ka mihi komihia I te atu I runga rawa, te ko tātou kingi Māori, te kaupapa mō tēnei rā, koronei ana tēnei te mihi atu ki a koutou. Thank you very much for the presentation. I suppose one of the questions I had, and I was wondering if you could sort of share some insights and thoughts what that platform you were speaking of could be at the gardens. So thinking more than what the existing areas could be, whether or not there's an opportunity for new and beyond haka in terms of that cultural experience that could be presented as a platform by Māori.
Okay, thank you for that. If you look at the haka event that we've run at the gardens, through that event we've developed a 1.5-hour walking tour around the gardens that focuses on Māori cultural heritage. We've also developed a 90 to 120-minute waka tour experience from the Hamilton Gardens down to the museum. That is the potential, and linking the Hamilton Gardens and that corridor to the CBD, I think, is our key focus, and that's where there is a lot of potential in terms of supporting the ferry bank and the CBD development, but also supporting the Hamilton Gardens and activating that whole space. Within the gardens itself, there's lots of opportunity. A few years back, at one of our first haka experiences, we worked with the gardens to develop a Rongoa Māori area. So, there's little things like that. Additional elements can be added in terms of pou or cultural features to help provide mnemonics, I think that's the word, to support cultural tourism, both at the gardens but also along that corridor between the Hamilton Gardens and the CBD.
Thank you, Mangai James. Deputy Mayor.
You just mentioned before about the pedestrian bridge. Can you just clarify that? Or a pedestrian bridge? I'm sorry, I didn't quite get that.
In the previous management plan 214, I believe it was, there was provision for a pedestrian bridge between the Hamilton Gardens and the reserve opposite the Hamilton Gardens on Peacocks Road. And at the moment we've got a proposal.
Where the Glenview Club is located,
yes.
Is that right? Yeah.
Yes, and we believe they'll open up access along the river, but also there's a proposal at present in terms of the haka proposition to activate that particular site as a cultural tourism offering.
Because obviously further along is going to be the new
yes.
where we're looking at proper cycle pedestrian links.
Yep.
But you're saying that there should be some option to link across to the Glenview?
Directly into the gardens.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Mayor Andrew.
So, Craig, are you doing a separate presentation later?
No. This is our sole presentation.
So, your second submission,
Yes.
this is our only opportunity to ask you questions about that.
Yes, that's correct.
Because you're down on the paperwork as doing a separate submission for
I can always come
they're
back
different.
this afternoon if that's...
Craig asked to combine his with Leanne's.
Okay, so I see that you're really clear here about wanting, and this lines up with Tainui's submission as well, so I'm going to bring that into it, because obviously it appears from reading all the three submissions that you are looking at being the management side of running multicultural experiences on a commercial level from Hamilton Gardens.
Yes.
And you're asking for, when I'm reading all three that all tie in together, you're asking for a piece of land to be able to do that from as part of the management plan.
That's correct.
And you, it appears that you, one concept would be to be on the other side of the river and have a bridge over.
That's
But
correct.
you're also talking about being very close to the beach, so that you can do your haka tours, your cooking, what do you call hangis, your the whole experience.
That's correct.
And you also want it very close to the Hamilton Gardens, where the buses come in, where people park, and close to where the main entrance is, where people come in and out, so that the whole thing works hand in hand and hand in glove.
That's correct.
So I just, I had to get this all together, I had to read all three of your submissions and marry them all up. So I'm just ensuring that it's still where you're heading and what you want, and that's what you're asking for through the submission process.
That's correct.
So you're basically asking for a block of land to be set aside for Waikato Tainui to do commercial tourism based around cultural activities, Māori activities, Tainui activities, which your company would partner and probably have a management, possibly have a management arrangement with Waikato Tainui, who would be the controllers of that block of land and the owners, and work closely with council to ensure that the whole thing married in together.
Yes, I think you've summed it up beautifully.
Okay, it just took me to read all three to bring it together, so I'm just checking that that's where you're heading and that's what you are asking for.
Yes.
Absolutely, and so we can see the opportunities, the employment opportunities created for our iwi. Hence, we're working very closely with the iwi, with Waikato Tainui. Yeah, we just think it's a great opportunity there, and that we're still going down that pathway as well. So hence the proposal, we're trying to keep the momentum going. Yeah.
Okay, so I look forward to the Waikato Tainui submitter who will come in later this morning, I understand, so thank you.
Okay, there are no further questions. Thank you for taking the time to submit to us today. Kia ora, thank you. Darren Mills is still not here. Right, our next submitter in the hot seat is Glenn Holmes, a trustee from the Hamilton Gardens Development Trust. Good morning, Glenn. How are you? Good. Good. Glenn, you have 10 minutes to present to us.
Good morning, councillors. Yes, my name is Glenn Holmes. I decided to write this presentation to you. I wish to talk to the Hamilton Gardens Development Trust submission regarding the draft management plan. I need firstly to give you my credentials because most of you don't know me. I'm a trustee of the Hamilton Gardens Development Trust. Our chairman, John Dobson, who was detailed to speak today, is overseas at present and he apologises for his absence. That can be recorded. I have been asked by the trustees to speak to the trust's submission in his place. Furthermore, though, I'm not only a trustee, but also a fundraiser for the trust. It's my responsibility to approach private families, to encourage them to donate funds to the development of the gardens specifically. I've been performing this voluntary role for over 3 years, and the success of it is shown by me standing, or sitting actually, in front of you now. My fellow trustees being John Dobson, the Honourable Simon Upton, Louise Dobson, John Tanner, Leonard Gardner, President of the Friends, Virginia Graham, who's here behind me, and myself, wish to convey to you the significant support of the Hamilton Gardens Development Trust for the draft plan through our submission. Councillors, I won't repeat what our submission states, other than to say two things. Firstly, our vision for the gardens is that it is a world-leading garden experience promoting an understanding of the context, meaning, and history of gardens. And secondly, the Trust has two key roles: ensuring the completion of the development of the gardens and spearheading the community's involvement in funding the development in partnership with the Hamilton City Council. And I'll speak a little bit about that later. I'll expand on the last of these statements with an example. Peter Sergel and I have been in discussion with the Hamilton Family Group with respect to their desire to make a large contribution to the gardens. Their interest has been increased with our ability to show the family the proposed 10-year draft plan. We have come to general agreement with them as to how they would like to assist the development. To be precise, it is the proposed information centre upgrade that they are attracted to. This because it is proposed that all visitors to the themed gardens will enter through the information centre. I'm not at liberty to divulge the name of this family group at this point, nor the amount they are considering as a donation. What I can say, though, is that this would be the largest donation the Trust has been able to obtain for the gardens by a substantial margin. The family is ready to begin the donation period 3 years, beginning next year. But this is subject to the plan, of course, being approved and moving into the next phase of expansion. To have a major donation to enable the information centre to proceed will kick off the development in a significant way. I urge you to consider the fact that this potential donor is keen now. The people involved with this prospective donation are ready and willing. We need to be able to tell them that their funds will be needed from next year, 2020. Further points I wish to make are twofold. Firstly, the Trust, as a group of private individuals, is working successfully alongside the Hamilton City Council as a partnership to enhance the development of the gardens, and this has been happening for some time, some years. There are individuals and families in the Waikato who are very supportive and proud of what Dr. Peter Sergel has designed, and this plan is attractive to them. Why? Because they believe, as we do, that this bold expansion plan enhances what local people and tourists can enjoy. The plan as a guide will help us as a city grow tourism further, thus enabling robust expansion of hotels and other amenities too many to name. The larger gardens will do its part to put Hamilton further on the map as a tourism destination. It's already the #1 attraction in the city, but what we need is for it to be continually talked about worldwide because it's unique. We like the plan because it protects the integrity of Peter Sergel's vision. We would not like the gardens turned into a fun park or entertainment destination. This plan has a strong sense of continuing the theme that the gardens is unique, as recognised by World Garden Authority, Professor Richard Benfield. Our support, and the support of local families like the one I've described earlier, is based on an expansion of the gardens as the draft plan describes. We like it, and the Hamilton Gardens Development Trust strongly urges Council to adopt the Hamilton Gardens Draft Management Plan in its entirety. Thank you.
Well done. Thank you, Glenn. Any questions from the committee? Mayor Andrew.
Where's the space for multicultural, where's the space for Tainui to come in as they've requested to come in during this submission process to run commercial, cultural activities on the site?
Mayor Andrew, I don't think it's my place to actually comment on that because the plan has been put and we're talking about that as it's been put to the meeting today. So I think it's that's more a operational and design question.
Well, where I'm heading is you're saying you want the plan adopted as it is.
Yes.
Will your group allow space for multicultural activities on the site? You're a powerful group. You're the spokesman for the group.
Yes.
Iwi and Tainui directly, who are the traditional Indigenous owners of the land. have asked to have a space set aside for this. It hasn't been included up to date, so obviously the plan's going to have to change. Will your group support this? Or consider this when it comes through?
Well, I think it'd be churlish of me to say that we wouldn't consider it, Mayor Andrew, but I think the point is that we've had this draft plan in play for quite some time, and I guess from my more personal point of view and what I've been doing and talking to people about donating funds to the plan or to the development of the gardens is such that they're keen on seeing that progress, and we all are, I think. I guess what you're suggesting here is a hold-up.
I'm suggesting that Waikato Tainui weren't consulted with as partners as part of this process, and this has bored us to the surface. And what I'm asking for is if
excuse me,
Waikato
Mayor
Tainui
Andrew, I'm not having what we had yesterday in this chamber. I'm asking you, look, the submitter's already said he can't answer that. The plan is ours, the draft plan is ours. That kind of question needs to come up with deliberations. Submitter has answered the question as best as he can. Do you have any further questions?
I will step aside for the Deputy Mayor.
Deputy Mayor.
Moment, thank you. Thank you so much, obviously, thank you so much for incredible creativity and, you know, what you as a trust are doing. Just the previous submission talked a wee bit about, you know, pedestrian links across to the Glenview Club and the green space and potential there. I guess it's how much a plan is absolutely locked in concrete as against some potential future proofing in terms of a future link across to the Glenview area, and I'm thinking particularly of that green space that council owns some of and the Glenview Club. What's your sort of, I get the key question is, while you've got a management plan, to what degree should there be flexibility to allow for some future proof, particularly cross river? And I've heard certain ideas for the Glenview Club, obviously.
Yes, good question. I think that the possibility of more access into the gardens leads to potential logistical problems, and there has been. I mean, part of the design in the current plan is that the information centre enables that to be the access to the themed gardens, and without projecting any future decision or whatever, if a future council decided that paid entry was a thing that need to be considered, then I think you'd need to think about the fact that other access into the gardens actually just provides more logistical problems in terms of that subject. So if you're talking about future-proofing it, I'd suggest that maybe the access through the new proposed, as you rightfully pointed out before, with the cycleway and walkway, I'll just put the question, does there need to be another pedestrian bridge or access at that part?
I mean, I'm certainly not. You know, This is just a lay person, I stress. My brain says the Waikato River there is such a highlight and beautiful, and some sort of pedestrian bridge lower down than the road bridge with the viewscape. I don't know, look, it's just... well, I think you probably answered me. You said there could probably be problems with it, and I'll take it up with staff. Is that a fair summary?
Yes.
Yeah, okay,
yes.
Thank you.
Access.
Thank you.
Yeah,
sure.
and logistics of control and whatever. Yeah.
Thank you.
Look, thanks, Glenn, for your submission. Are you confident that within the 10-year period, given that the big donation grant that you're talking about, that the whole thing can be finished within that period, that there's enough sort of goodwill and impetus to do that, and one, and the second part of that, and that there's the ability to look at amendments to the plan that keep the vision whole, but maybe the details changed?
The first question, the answer to that's very easy. It's yes, and I'm saying that from, I guess, some confidence about who I've been talking with recently, the support for the gardens and the plan. And as I said in my talk here before, being able to put a plan with a picture in front of somebody and say, do you like this? This is what's being proposed. Would you like to donate some money towards this development? And to have the, I guess you could say, such positive vibe back from the people that I've been talking to, in particular recently, is really good. So that's a long answer to the answer yes. The other part is, yes, we are confident that in the 10-year period the money can be, I mean, we have, as a trust, said that we will raise $300,000 a year. That's our aim. And I know that the Friends of the Gardens have said that they will, and I'll leave that to the President of the Gardens, Friends of the Gardens to talk about, but groups such as ours have made commitments to do that. And so the people I've been talking to recently, and it's unfortunate I haven't got to the point where we have an agreement today. We've got some detail to sort out, and that's rightfully so. But it's given me confidence that we can do this, that the support is coming from the people of Hamilton and the Waikato to really kick this next phase off.
And the ability to accommodate some amendments?
Oh, look, I think we've got to say that future councils, although this will be a management plan over 10 years, may well decide that in the event of some difference and some changes that happen in the city at that time will need to be accommodated and discussed. Yes. Yep.
Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor. Thank you very much, Glenn, for your submission today.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Councillor Angela. Madam Chair, thank you.
Right, Darren, no. Marilyn Yeoman. Marilyn, welcome. You're very well known to us and to our process, so you know what to do.
Yes, I seem to be the fall guy. I
you're ready,
represent the Garden Research Foundation, and I have to apologise for our leader, Professor James Beattie, who is in Dunedin and cannot be with us. So, as a trustee, I'm next in line. We represent one of the 85% of positive submitters. I believe online 92% were positive. But who are we? Our foundation ensures the international reputation at a tertiary level. It promotes an understanding of the context, meaning and history of gardens. We are focused on maintaining the integrity of design and implementation, and we are developing contacts with experts both here and overseas, so it's an international link as well. And to put the gardens on the map internationally, we need these tertiary connections. We are 100% in agreement with the council plan, and we regard it as bold and visionary, and we think that councillors have made a real mark for the future of Hamilton by this bold plan. This will complete the story of the gardens, our museum of gardens. So the integrity of design is really important to flow through. We would really not like to see other touristy sort of things in amongst it all, because we think it would lower it. There's a need for completion because Peter won't go on forever. And as he's the key to this gardens, and as his designs are what has held it all together, we feel that we need to make sure that it is actually implemented while we've still got his brilliance with us. And his attention to detail, his accuracy and his research for each garden is previously unknown. So that's part of our brief. We are trying to encourage, we have links with universities, we're trying to instill a love of garden design. We're giving out scholarships for it and trying to make sure that Waikato University becomes a centre for garden design as well as for the other things it's renowned for. Hamilton Gardens is the only major tourist site in Hamilton all year round. It had an 8% increase in 2018 and it looks as if it's got a 9% increase this year. Tourists are now coming to New Zealand for the specific reason of coming to view our gardens. And it's really satisfying when you're behind the desk and somebody comes in and chats to you and you say, where are you from and what are you doing? And they say, we have come to New Zealand just to see these gardens. Now that puts us at another level, doesn't it, tourist-wise? We think that Hamilton could easily become the tourist hub for the whole of the area, so that instead of going to Rotorua, people would come to Hamilton and then they would go to Waitomo or to Hobbiton or any of the other things around, but they would physically stay in Hamilton because that's what we're trying to get them to do. We believe, and I'm very pleased to hear Glenn's submission, because we believe that you need a major high quality entrance that looks like a world garden. It certainly doesn't at the moment. We need centralised parking at the moment. It's here, there and everywhere. And for security, it's too divided at the present time. And for any of you that have been there, in the summertime, when there's something on and Gourmet at the Gardens, you see them parking precariously up the hills and roundabout, and it really does need some attention drastically. Recognise that the rhododendron lawn will go, but we have been up looking at the new part in the Governor's lawn, and we can't believe how the difference has been made to the sound by that earth buffer. So it could easily replace that area. It would also give us a better international look. And with the change to State Highway 1, we don't know what sort of an effect that is going to have on the gardens at all. So it's a good thing to get the rest of the gardens done so that it becomes even more imperative that people come here. We would like to see both the garden design and the international connection become more highly valued. And that is it.
Thank you very much, Marilyn. We'll go to questions from committee members. Councillor Henry.
Chair, and thank you so much, Marilyn, for your awesome report. And I just want one clarification. You said somewhere in between in your report that you don't want to see any extra touristy things happening because it could lower the standard. What did you mean by that exactly?
I mean, each garden is specifically designed and has total integrity. When we have Indian people coming, they say, oh, everyone's got an Indian garden, and they go there and they say, no, but this one is correct. They do the same thing with the Japanese one, and the other ones as well. And to have something touristy added, whether it sells knickknacks or whatever, it just doesn't seem quite in the keeping of the flow of the gardens. By all means have it, but have it somewhere else.
Okay, or at some higher standard. I mean, you're looking for a standard in authenticity? Or?
Yes,
yeah.
Yes, we are.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Taylor.
Thanks for that, Marilyn. Great submission. You touched on security in regard to parking at one point there. And I'm just I'm mindful that this isn't not sort of part of the plan per se, security, but in light of a lot of issues that have happened in regards to crime,
Yes.
do we need to be looking at more security features in this plan?
I think you definitely do.
Yeah.
garden parking is particularly exposed, being in all those different areas. And it would be much easier for security purposes if it was all centralised.
Yeah. Any other features we need to be looking at in regards to security, like lighting or security cameras or?
We'd love to see security cameras, and the thought of the bridge coming across, which I think could be a good idea, but it absolutely horrifies me with the security risk it would have to all those gardens along the riverbank.
Okay, because we're trying to attract tourists, as you
Yes.
say, and we had an incident with the bus,
Yes.
as you well know, with
Yes.
international tourists.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor. Deputy Mayor.
The bridge, are you talking about the proposed road bridge or the
No,
pedestrian
the
bridge?
walking bridge.
Walking bridge. But I just want to pick up your other key message, and thanks obviously for all you and your team are doing. Your other key message is for council to retain the reserved green space just below the Glenview Club, is that right?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
It is. We don't want to see housing coming down to the edge. We think that park is really precious.
That'll be, Madam Chair, I'll be asking that question when we do more information. I'd just like to know exactly the footprint of that Glenview side from council and how the greenscape may integrate with the gardens.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you,
Yes.
thank you.
Thank you. Mungo James.
Yeah, thank you, Marilyn. Thank you very much for that. Just one question for clarity. You spoke of that, I suppose, that request around avoiding further commercial, sort of follow on from Councillor Henry's question around no further activities. I know for myself and many other groups going down to the gardens, there is those open spaces within the sort of gardens management plan for running around, playing touch. So that softer side, which is non-commercial. So I suppose I'm asking that question, is your request around no further commercial tourism activities at the garden?
Permanent tourism. Yes.
Yeah.
It is.
Cool, thank you.
Thank you.
Right, that's all the questions for you. Thank you very much, Marilyn.
Thank
and
you.
Look after yourself. Every
Will
time
do.
we see you here, you've got an injury.
It does seem like that.
Thank you so much. Right, our next submitter is Laura Callaway from the Waikato Heritage Group. Good morning, Laura. How are you? You know the drill?
Kia ora, my name's Laura Callaway and I'm representing the Waikato Heritage Group. We're a small group of individuals who've been involved in heritage in Hamilton and the Waikato for the last 40 years, but we also include members wider afield, which includes John P. Adam, who is a heritage landscape historian well renowned in New Zealand. We respect all the work that the Friends have put into the gardens over the last several decades. It's been a long-term plan. Our submission focuses around the incorporation of heritage within the management plan so that it's seen as one of the core ideals and it has some policy against that. And so what we've sort of looked to address is a few items that we have a little bit of a concern about. With the Hamilton Cemetery, Hamilton East Cemetery, it wasn't overly clear whether that is part of this management plan or not. And so part of our submission on that was just to ensure that it's seen as separate from the gardens that are being designed. It specifically has its own conservation plan, and that was undertaken by the council a number of years ago, and we'd like to see that referenced in this management plan, particularly if the gardens are actually developed. Within that conservation plan are the guidance policies, and in particular also a charter known as ICOMOS New Zealand Charter, which is an international-based charter that looks to respect the different layers of heritage and also gives some guidance policies on developments that might take place. Another aspect that we're very keen on is that the heritage of the existing site, the various layers of heritage on the existing site, are actually assessed and identified and protected. Currently, Hamilton City Council and the district plan has no gardens actually under historic items, and no historic streets, and no historic parks. And so there's been a 40-year ongoing, should we call it a battle? Can't work out how else to say it, that there's some form of protection for this layer of heritage in our community. And our members of our group have submitted to numerous management plans on the lake, on the green belt, fronted to see parks and reserves on numerous occasions as well. And there's still this absence of understanding of cultural landscape. So we'd like to see that the earlier parts of this site, the earlier European parts, which is the 1914 nursery, is identified and has some form of protection. And we'd also like to see that the garden that was developed on the site from the 1950s on, I think opened in the 1960s, is also identified. And this is the tropical glasshouse area. The third point that we'd like to make is about the station master's house and the proposed garden around it. In the Hamilton City Council's long-term strategic plan, we've previously made a submission on this. And our view is that if there's money to be set aside for developing a garden around this particular site, we'd like to see some of that money actually put aside so that this important part of Frankton's heritage is actually returned to Frankton. It's a historic place that's been sitting there for, I think it's more than 30 years now, and with promises for its return. So we're not certain what happened in the strategic plan, but my guess is probably very little. So in reference to our objection to the garden around the site, we noted that it included the relocation of the station master's house. So we'd like to see that amended if at all possible, please. And we're happy to talk further on that. So in general, as said, we're in support of the Hamilton Gardens management plan going forward. We'd like to see some scheduling, some funding against identification and protection so that people like the Friends can actually go forward on the historical part of the actual site. We'd also like to see that extended a little bit further so that when you bring people to the Hamilton Gardens, they also get to see some of Hamilton's historic gardens. And you'll see that's why we've mentioned Beale Cottage, the Hamilton Hotel Gardens, and other such places. And so expanding it outside of the gardens gives a better interpretation of the historic gardens of Hamilton. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Councillor Bunting.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for your really interesting report. The Station Master's house, I do want to flesh that out a wee bit more. Where do you want it to go to exactly?
So the Station Master's house was located right next door to the Frankton Railway Station, which was in High Street. Right. It was first actually built. And then it was moved down to what was known as Chilcot Road, and that's where the Waste Care Centre is. And it was removed so that Hamilton City Council could put the Waste Care Centre there. The building was already actually listed by Heritage Struck Places Trust. It was already scheduled at that stage by Hamilton City Council, and it was not moved with the agreement of the community. Okay. And as soon as it was actually moved, there were requests for it to be removed back to its place. Hamilton has a slight problem identifying Frankton as being a separate history. There's no surviving 19th century heritage built now surviving in Frankton. And so if you go forward looking at heritage, you can't just put a sign up and say, this is where our old stuff used to be. The old stuff should actually be where it came from. This is the station master's house. There's no railway next door to the cemetery. So picking it up and putting a garden around it.
Right. So you're saying
this belongs to Frankton.
Down by the railway station, is that what you're saying?
So potentially it could go down by the railway station again if there was land, or it could go near the railway settlement. This was the central building of the Frankton Railway Settlement. And this is your nationally significant heritage, built heritage place in Hamilton. It's the only place that's got that status already attached to it. And having spent the last 30 years trying to do something about this. I'm horrified that I'm still sitting here at this point in time, 3 decades later, talking about something that has national significance that the council still hasn't actually grasped in Frankton. That's my personal view.
Yeah. So have you, how much would it cost, do you know, to move a...
It depends on how you actually do that. It depends whether you get sponsorship. You'd have to get a quote from a removal company. There are several in Hamilton that could do that.
Okay.
But you also need money to actually re-establish it on site. And it needs to be a site that's actually either owned by council or that someone is prepared to gift for that purpose.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Pascoe.
Yeah, thank you, Laura, for your submission and gentle reminders about the history of our city and what we're failing to identify. I thought we had some degree of heritage protection over Steel Park, and I thought we had that clearly identified, particularly the trees, because the trees were planted by some of the founding families of Hamilton East, or Irish Town as it was known then. Am I correct in that, or does it sit under something quite different?
No, you do actually have a schedule of trees. You have a schedule of historic items. That's really the place where there needs to be more understanding, and some of these things perhaps need to be moved over into. You also have archaeological sites and cultural sites of significance, and you have this third category known as trees. But the problem with the trees is it's based on a very outdated form known as STEM assessment.
Sorry, as?
STEM assessment. And it's based on the idea of amenity in trees as amenity, not protecting them in a heritage way. So it can be very easy for a tree that's very old, not looking pretty, to actually lose when it comes to its long-term survival.
Right. That hasn't happened there, though, has it?
No, it hasn't happened in Steel, but we can give you numerous other areas that haven't been identified.
And we've got a storyboard there, haven't we, which tells the story. So we should do a little more of that too?
Yes.
Yep, okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. Councillor McPherson.
Yeah, sorry, it's not quite on the garden subject, but it's on the subject of the submission given in relation to Frankton. I was interested to hear you say there was no heritage left in Frankton when I regard, I'm asking if you think I'm correct in regarding the Frankton Railway House precinct, bird sanctuary, some of us call it with the street names, and the railway workshops. Aren't they part of Frankton heritage, and isn't that part of Frankton?
20th century, yes.
Well, early 1900s. Yeah.
1920s. Yes, of course. No, that's what I was mentioning, is that the heritage that's sitting in Frankton that's been identified as the railway settlement.
And that isn't that protected by, under the district plan? And
in part.
The heritage precinct?
In part.
How do you mean in part?
So the conservation area that originally was going to include the Station Master's house and the whole of the railway settlement is different to what you have in your district plan. It doesn't include Rifle Range Road, for instance, and other components of the railway settlement. That's been like that for a long, long time.
There's several houses, aren't there, on Rifle Range Road that are part of the protected area? on the northeast side?
On the rifle range, the original Rifle Range factory houses are not in it at all. They were excluded, and also the owners of the I think the 3 houses near Strawbrook Park were also excluded. But I'm not wanting to diverge onto that.
Yeah, well,
because
I'm just wondering why we're getting submitted to on this now, when I would have been great to have had them in district plan submissions, because I don't recall ever having heard this discussion before. That's happy to take that offline, but
no, it's district plan heritage inventory in your district.
I've only heard support for the continuation of the Frankton Heritage Precinct.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you very much. That's all the questions we have for you. Thank you, Laura. Right. Chris Williams is not here. Virginia Graham, you are here. President of Friends of the Gardens. You know what to do. You've been here before as well.
Morena, good morning. Well, I am Virginia Graham and I'm the President of the Friends of Hamilton Gardens. Now, Vice President Marlena Ruka was to have represented the Friends this morning, but she is unwell and she extends her apologies. So I'm speaking for not only the 500 plus friends, including the tour guides and the Information Centre volunteers, but I'm also speaking for all our sponsors and supporters who believe in enough in what we do so that they generously support us in cash and kind to help us achieve our goals, which are to promote the use and enjoyment of the gardens and to raise funds for its ongoing development. We also believe in the 4 goals of the draft management plan, and I'd like to remind you of these. To create a world-class garden experience, to improve the capacity and practical operation of the Hamilton Gardens site, to enhance the value of the Hamilton Gardens to the local community, and to protect and sustain Hamilton Gardens for future generations. This visionary and necessary plan will achieve these goals. Peter Circle's vision is a collection or a museum of gardens which tells the story of civilization, and this is underpinned by extensive research, resulting in outstanding design and a wise policy to restrict activities which do not relate to the overall concept for the gardens, resulting in an authenticity recognised by garden historians worldwide. For example, Te Parapara Garden has a unique Indigenous influence, reminding visitors of the rich heritage of the garden site, which was originally productive gardens enabled by a river highway, and after many changes of use, is once again a riverside garden bringing prosperity to our city. This authenticity and integrity of design, as you have heard Marilyn say, has been the catalyst for the collaborative establishment of the Gardens History Research Foundation between the Gardens and the University of Waikato. Our tour guides and volunteers in the Information Centre, we meet and greet visitors on a daily basis. They all know and understand how important it is to provide a memorable experience for our visitors, particularly when the visitors come with great expectations, such as the power of social media and online marketing today. We must continue to meet expectations and to protect our reputation. Back in May, the community had the opportunity to attend open days at the gardens to learn more about the impact of the draft management plan. Many were anxious about the changes outlined for Stage 2, the change of use for the rhododendron lawn and the mention of the charging option. They learned of the need for the following measures to protect and enhance our visitor experience. The consolidation of parking areas utilising the rhododendron lawn and removing the disconnection between the existing car parks. We wanted better, safer access for motorists, cyclists, pedestrians, wheelchair and mobility scooter users and bus passengers. One entry point to an enlarged and improved visitor centre and to the enclosed gardens. Improved access to the riverside and walking paths, riverside cycle and walking paths. They learned about the Governor's Green, located between the Rose Garden and Cobham Drive, which has been levelled and contoured to provide a new event centre similar to Rhododendron Lawn. And I hope that all the elected members here, you will have been down there and had a look at our new Governor's Green. And you will find then that the new banks, which have run alongside Cobham Drive, are already providing an effective sound barrier, and planting around the green will create an enclosed oasis. The green will also have a water view, this time of the river instead of Turtle Lake. But for many of those people who came to those open days, the best news was that several saplings of the rhododendron lawn's iconic and much-loved white gum are thriving in the nursery, awaiting their new home on Governor's Green. The plan allows for a continuing momentum of development with a new garden underway every 6 months. It's a great way to keep the community engaged and supportive. To this end, the Friends have pledged to raise $420,000 over the next 3 to 4 years for features in 3 of the gardens currently under construction. It's a measure of the confidence that we have in the community's passion, commitment and goodwill for the gardens. So stage 2 has to go ahead, for only then can stage 3 come alive. Its development will then proceed with a minimum of impact on visitors, and it will provide at least an additional 2 event spaces, which are often asked for, an amphitheatre and a more intimate area behind the proposed French parterre pavilion. At the open days, we explained that the issue of charging is in the plan as an option only, not as a given, and further research would be undertaken to investigate how charging would be organised, to consult with those who would likely implement it, and to decide if charging will actually achieve the desired income streams. Our open day visitors left reassured and excited about what is to come. The economic benefits for our city are obvious and have been discussed many times. The Friends want Hamilton to become a must-stop-by city, not a drive-by city, which could happen when the expressway is finished, unless we continue to develop and maintain a must-see world-class garden. The great museums of the world all require more than one day to do them justice, and so it will be for our gardens. Imagine for a moment visitors arriving, exploring the Western Sector Gardens one day, an overnight stay in Hamilton, in the city, dinner out or Uber Eats delivered to the motel, a return next day to explore the Eastern Sector with lunch at the cafe or a picnic by the lake, or a cruise on the Waikato River Explorer. We all benefit. There is too much at stake to stop now. We are already the region's main tourist attraction, but let's not forget that the gardens also provide solace and soul food for many Hamiltonians. It is a place for memory making and a place of pride for what the people of our community, including the Friends of the Gardens, have achieved over 40 years. By adopting the draft management plan, we can continue to show the world what a passionate community and a wise and bold council can achieve together. We can complete the final chapters in the unique and wonderful story of Hamilton Gardens, which is a place of pride and well-being for all of us forever. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Virginia. Before I go to questions, you're also down to speak as an individual. Do you want to keep that separate, or do you just want to?
I would like to keep that separate.
Okay, all right. So we'll go to questions on this to Councillor Bunting.
Thank you. Four reasonably short questions, Madam Chair. The Governor's Green, really interested in that one. It's being done now, as you said. Was that part of a previous plan?
I think so. I think, yes, it's always been a part of this particular plan, and
of this one, yeah, but I mean it's being done now before this plan's been ratified. So,
well, I think it was always intended because of the parking issues we had, because the concern over the loss of the rhododendron lawn needing to be used for parking. Then we had to find another event space,
right? And
the Governor's Green has certainly met that.
But we haven't decided that yet, though.
No. It was in the original, in the plan that was put to you last year.
Yeah.
And the reason that we're here today is because you asked for further consideration to be given to the question of the Governor's Green and the rhododendron lawn, and also to the question of parking. So that's the reason that we're here today.
Yes, no, I know why we're here today. I'm just trying to work out why it's being done before we... Okay. We'll get to that back later. How old is the white gum there?
How old is the
white gum? I was interested in that.
The white gum.
Talk about the saplings.
The white gum is looking good at the moment, but all gum trees have a limited life. After a certain time, they do start to lose their branches, and we've been told by arborists that in another 3 to 4 years it will be on its last legs.
Oh, okay.
And Peter Sergel has already anticipated that in his usual good planning way, and has ensured that there are saplings growing healthily in the nursery to replace that one.
So how long will they take to be sort of an impressive height?
Well, I think they're doing quite well at the moment. Things will, all good things take time, Mark.
That's right. So you don't know? Or?
I think, well, Peter might be able to answer that. Peter, how long have those gums been growing in the nursery?
Do you mind?
Some years.
I think they're being planted at the moment.
Oh, okay.
Okay. All right, now that'll do me. Thanks, Jenny.
Deputy Mayor.
For your obviously work and highlighting the 500 friends. Around the charging, I think, if I'm crystal clear, the friends don't rule out charging, but there's a whole lot of steps that have to happen before that. I stressed charging for
Yes.
non-Hamilton residents.
Yes. We would like to see that, should charging be discussed or investigated, that consideration would be given to differential charging, meaning that the friends of the gardens would be exempt because they pay towards it, and also that ratepayers would be exempt because they are already contributing to the gardens development in the incremental targeted rate.
And it could be that Waikato Waipa does a targeted rate, so those residents could continue to get in free.
Yeah.
And I know they'd be really keen on that. Thank you. Thanks.
Well, we'd be happy to have them come along and have
well-
free entry as long as they provided some monetary assistance.
I think we think alike. Thank you.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. Councillor McPherson. Yeah, I like that. Hang on. Oh, Virginia, wait on. Sorry.
Sorry.
Councillor McPherson has a question.
Sorry, James.
I like that last point about getting some money out of the others. So does Martin, I can see. But I just want to pick up on, you said ratepayers get a discount. What about residents? Don't people, for instance, who are renting pay for the rates of their house through their rent?
Dave, these questions have been bandied around for a long time, and they will be addressed by a working party who will look at all
No, I'm
these
just
things.
going on your comment about ratepayers,
yeah.
because you seem to draw a
Because
distinction.
ratepayers are contributing already, and by the end of the 10-year plan time, they will be contributing something like $20 out towards the development of the
I don't
gardens.
think you
But
understood my
residents,
question.
It's a hard one. I don't know how we're going to get around that, because people who aren't ratepayers, who are renters, they use the gardens just like everybody else does. How we make that? They could always join the Friends and pay $30 and get unlimited entry for the whole year. So that's another option.
That's all right. I just want to check about your distinction that you drew there. So that makes a difference for me, that's for sure.
Yeah,
Thanks.
no, it's a tricky one, but we hope that a working party would examine all these issues.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Virginia. Do you want to stay now and do your individual, or do you want a break?
No, I don't mind. I'll do mine.
Okay. So committee members, Virginia's now going to talk to us as an individual. And that's right down on the bottom of your, the schedule.
Draft management plan for the Hamilton Gardens. Well, this time I'm speaking as a lifelong resident of Hamilton with the Hamilton Gardens in my DNA. I am also an information centre volunteer who loves welcoming visitors and sharing with them the story of the gardens. I tell them that it was back in 1979 that Hamilton's elected members of the day had the courage to adopt the visionary plan of a young landscape architect, Peter Sergel, for not another botanic garden, but a garden which would uniquely reveal the context, meaning and history of gardens, or how different cultures expressed their philosophies in the way they gardened, a history of civilization and a museum of gardens, and all this in our very own city, contributing to its identity and its prosperity. For the past 40 years, Dr. Sergel's vision has inspired this city to give in cash and kind and time and talent to create an internationally recognised garden which brings the world to our door every day of the year. However, it is an unfinished story. There are more garden stories to tell, and to do this well, I believe the draft management plan must be adopted to ensure our increasing number of visitors have the best possible experience. By easier access for all throughout the entire 54 hectares, an outstanding and welcoming entrance, safe and secure parking, and more event spaces. These issues and others must not be overlooked or delayed by a lack of forward planning. Two proposals in the plan seem to be causing the most concern: the change of use for the rhododendron lawn and the option of charging for entry. As an information centre volunteer for 13 years, I'm very aware that on our busiest days, there are many headaches caused by the lack of enough safe parking spaces and the separation of the parking areas and the stress that this places on the staff. The plan reassures me that the rhododendron car park will be attractively landscaped and that the Governor's Green will be an event space just as accessible and attractive as the rhododendron lawn. Already the grassed earth banks alongside Cobham Drive and above the green are proving an effective sound barrier, and these will still to be planted. Introducing a differential entry charge to the enclosed gardens only has to remain an option until stage 2 is complete. I would support exemption from charging for city ratepayers who already contribute through a targeted rate and for Friends of the Gardens. However, as I said before, a working group must investigate all the options before any charge is introduced. In the meantime, a voluntary donation, or koha, has been encouraged with great charm by those of us who help staff the information centre. Finally, as a born and bred Hamiltonian, I am proud to say that nowhere else in the world is there a garden which tells the story of civilization through a collection of gardens. It is already a museum of gardens, albeit an unfinished one, and it needs to be recognised, supported and funded as such. Its design integrity is recognised worldwide. We have a reputation to protect. We must ensure the final chapters of this story can be written. So I'm asking you, who represent the citizens of this city, to please follow the example of your predecessors in 1979 and make a bold decision for continuing to develop this world-class garden as proposed in the draft management plan. Thank you.
Thank you again, Virginia. We've got a question from Councillor Henry.
Thank you so much, and I actually should have asked that before with your other hat on, but hopefully it doesn't matter. You've got these newer donation boxes and very attractive. And do you find there is a lot more donations happening now, that they're visible?
Yes, it certainly does increase our donations. So many people don't come with cash these days. So when we're on duty at the information centre, it's really good to be able to say to people, you could make a donation through your card or cash. It is helping.
Fantastic, thank you.
Thank you very much, Virginia, for everything that you do for the gardens. Thank you. Right, our last submitter is standing in for the Chris Williams on the Hamilton Gardens Arts Festival. It's Graham. Welcome, Graham. How are you?
Good, thanks.
Good. Now, Graham, you've got 10 minutes.
Super.
And if you can, there's plenty of time for questions after that, so
Sure.
you can take your time.
Thank you very much. Just pour myself some water if that's okay.
Yes.
Although I have been introduced, I'll formally introduce myself, I think, as this microphone, I think is appropriate. Yes, I'm Graham Cairns. I'm on the board of trustees of the festival, have been so for 6 or I think 7 years maybe. Time flies when you're having fun. I've been associated with the festival since its inception, having performed at every single one in a variety of different disciplines on, I'm just counting them up, 18 different sites throughout the gardens. So that's why it's me doing the presenting today, because of my long history of uses of outdoor space, as opposed to some of the more erudite and articulate members of the board. You've got me. So the festival board and the team are very excited and wildly enthusiastic about the new themed gardens, and we love the old themed gardens. We think it's absolutely incredible and wonderful. And we have a very good working relationship with the gardens team, and we value that highly, and without that the festival couldn't proceed. It is with trepidation, therefore, that I'm charged with pointing out what we consider to be a significant flaw in the plan of the development. I'm aware that there's an irony here. It's a bit like the tail wagging the dog. The garden started the festival, and now the festival has the temerity to say, hang on, we don't think you got that right. But the board is charged with the task of putting the festival's interests at first, and so that's what we need to do. I'm going to assume here you're very familiar with the spaces and the uses, so I'm not going to waste your time describing them to you. So specifically what we're talking about is the turning of the rhododendron lawn into a car park. From our point of view, that's why that space works so well for the festival, not just that it's flat and grassy and large and handy to the hub of the festival, the very centre, but also very quiet from road noise from Cobham Drive. I've checked out the so-called Governor's Green. I walked around it. I did a sound test, not with a decibel meter, but with my ears, at 6 p.m. on a Tuesday evening. It's very noisy there. Admittedly, the earth that's been banked up there does block some of the sound, but it's too low. You can still see the trucks passing by, and it only covers a third of the road frontage. So it's a good site for something, but not for anything involving, in its present state, music in the festival or anything that needs to be heard. We've used the rhododendron lawn in the festival for the big shows. We erect the main stage there, and that's where we have the headline act for the festival, and these are the big popular, some would say populist, sometimes overseas events that draw crowds of hopefully 3,000 or more. They make the festival appeal to a broader demographic than is normal necessarily, make it look a bit groovy, and hopefully make us some money so we don't need to go for so much sponsorship. And with that money, we therefore pay for some of the more arty things that make up a festival that don't necessarily draw huge crowds. We also put on similarly sized but effectively free cornerstone events that you may or may not be familiar with, the Teddy Bears Picnic, the Sunset Symphony, these sorts of big things. These have been with the festival, I believe, since its inception. In fact, some of them may have even predated the festival. So the sound is crucial, but another thing is the proximity. And I need to digress for a moment or two here, excuse me. In the last 3 or 4 years, we've hired, as an owning shareholder, a thing called the Pacific Crystal Palace. I don't know if you've seen this. It's a large, dismantleable, transportable, quite luxurious cabaret space built on the style of the Spiegel tents from Germany. It turns up in festivals all around New Zealand, and we've popped it on what we thought was the best place, and it's, I don't know if this zone has a name, it's if you're at the Rogers Rose Gardens and you decided to walk to Cobham Drive, you'd bump into it sort of, or alternatively, if you've come out of the rhododendron lawn onto the entrance number 2 and you're walking towards the Governor's Green, you'd bump into it eventually. Good site, I thought, and we needed an indoor venue because putting on an outdoor festival in Waikato in February is tricky, to say the least, because you never know what the weather's going to do. And if we were rained out, that'd be the end of the festival. We broke. Also, some really good acts, won't come to the festival unless there's a known space that they can do. They like to perform indoors. Unfortunately, that's how it is. We put that there. I thought it's worked quite well, but audiences report it's too far away from the car park, particularly in the dark and in the rain and at night. In the Waikato, you have both of those quite often, and also some people can't even find it. So in this sense, I think we have to assume that the audience is right, and so the festival's wanting to consolidate the footprint of the festival, squeeze it right in, make it compact, greater sense of excitement, a bit like WOMAD. Everything's all happening there, get the vibe really happening. And so we're proposing for that and for other reasons and we'll get in the quotes at the moment, a major internal recostuming, shall we say, an outfitting of the pavilion room, which is now available during the festival since the print ward moved out. It's a similar size to the Pacific Crystal Palace. We'd own the internal fit. It'd feel like, perhaps, one of the quotes is it'd look like the people will be making it to look like an Arabian tent. So it'd have the same sort of interesting vibe, same kind of size. So it's right there. We'd still be wanting to use for small, really carefully chosen shows some of the themed gardens. So there's a real connection between the themed garden and the performance, so not just willy-nilly chucking stuff in a beautiful themed garden just because it's there. So, but 3 main spaces. So medium-sized indoor, pavilion, medium-sized outdoor, all the way from the Turtle Lake back towards the pavilion building. So there's a stage down there. There's what we call the festival hub. So that circular lawn, which works really well as a gathering space. Street theatre back on the paving zone. And then for the large outdoor activities, just across the wee bridge, the rhododendron lawn. That's why we wouldn't like to see that turned into a car park at all. Because if the siting of the Pacific Crystal Palace is too peripheral and non-central for audiences, then way out in the far corner where the Governor's Green is proposed to be is way, way too far for most audiences, apparently. That's how it is. Nice spot, but I don't think we can use it much, particularly not for that really, really crucial large-scale events that we've been having. We acknowledge that car parking is necessary, and so I've taken the aerial plan here, which you're all familiar with, looked at the size of the rhododendron lawn, made a little template. That's the size of it. Where can we put it? Well, it seems to me, and I'm not a landscape architect, it seems to fit immediately to the west of entrance number 2. So the entrance that you'd walk, you know, as we're talking about walking from the rhododendron lawn out to the Pacific Crystal Palace or Governor's Green, it seems to fit there. Not exactly, but it fits. It would be enough parking. I thought this up all by myself, and then I was amazed to discover that it exists as alternative proposal number 3. So it was officially on the books. It would obviously require some road realignment, and I don't know what the details are regarding putting in a roundabout at the end of Grey Street. I presented this to Peter. Peter has some reasons why it's not a good idea. I'll let him articulate those. I don't recollect what exactly they were, but that proposal was discounted. I think it's a good idea, and the festival board thinks that's a preferable idea from the festival's point of view, but in terms of keeping everything consolidated and preserving that really useful, wonderful space, the rhododendron lawn. That's it, really.
Okay, thanks, Graham. I just have a question for you. We heard from Tainui Waka Tourism this morning their request for more smaller event spaces. I'm paraphrasing smaller, but more event spaces throughout the plan. Given your expertise in performing, is that something that, and I know that the festival, of course, you use the Italian Gardens, you use a lot. You do move around the specialty gardens. Based on that plan, is that something that you would want to see as well?
Sorry, more?
So more smaller stages, more gardens designed with event space within them. Do you think when you look at that plan that is something that's lacking?
Not necessarily. I think it's a good idea, but I mean the Gardens isn't set up to be a performance venue necessarily, is it? I mean it's about the history of international gardening. So, you know, we can adapt performances to certain sites. Oops, sorry. And I don't think it's bad that we leave others alone. So I don't really have a strong opinion on that front, sorry.
Yeah, no, you've given me a great answer, thank you. Right, Graham, there are no further questions for you, so thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, folks.
All right, committee members, that's all of our speakers today, so we are going to ask staff to take to the table. We have questions only on the report, not the substantive plan, and then any information that you've heard from the submitters who are presented today, and a reminder that there are also plenty of written submissions from people who haven't presented to us today. We'll gather that list and staff will use that to inform the deliberations process. Yes, because this is the hearings, yeah. As long as we just don't move into any kind of debate or even questions around deliberations, we just have to be careful. So we'll just wait for staff to take the table. What's the time? 20 minutes. So welcome Peter, Leanne and Joanne. We're in your hands. You can either take the report as read or present some highlights and then we'll just go to questions.
You read the report, you want
Thank you everyone for the opportunity to be here. We're happy to present the report as read in the main. I think we would draw your attention to the fact that we did note in the analysis in terms of a few comments made by submitters today that perhaps the analysis clarified, for example, misunderstandings around the ghost scum and its place in the plan, and the Hamilton cemeteries and its place in the plan. So we're happy to answer any questions. It might be easier to tackle things that way.
Thank you, Leanne. Well, I'll go to Deputy Mayor first.
Just focus first of all, just the heritage issues, and obviously one was referring to the historic Hamilton East cemetery, which includes the First World War, and also the railway house. What's your thinking? I just want to know if we need to stress, I mean, I know that's what I'm trying to delineate is obviously what is part of the gardens, but the broad boundary, and to me I would certainly see the boundary not of the gardens but of this overview being, you know, the bridge that's going in. You've got the Cobham Drive one side, you have the river on the other. Can you, any observations you've got in terms of Laura Callaway's submission?
Yes, I think we just need to clarify that the Hamilton Gardens management plan doesn't include the cemetery. The cemetery has its own management plan that you would have approved at some stage. Yeah. The gardens gets reduced inside over to the new Wairere Drive linked to Peacock Bridge, and in a way it surrounds the cemetery, but the cemetery is dealt with separately.
But when we look at that, it would just obviously, the critical question would be, you know, how one relates to t'other. It's a separate entity, but is clearly part of what I'd call the broader green space.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
And can you just tease out the railway house and the observations that were made there?
I suppose our feeling is that if the railway Station Master's house went back to Frankton, it would present the same issues you've got around Beagle Cottage, with people living in it or not living in it, public access, who looks after the garden, all those features. Whereas if it's in the gardens, I appreciate it's not the right site, but it can be, you know, it would then have a high public profile. A lot of people would see it and have interpretation, explanation of its significance. It would be surrounded by a nice garden, maintained, and it wouldn't be invisible, you know, in Frankton. It would have a high profile and could be respected and properly maintained.
Again, I'm not in the report. It would be useful just to reference that, because if we're looking at that, where logically, realistically, would it be relocated to in the Frankton area? How would that relate? I mean, would it be located near the current Frankton railway station?
I don't.
There's a whole range of issues. Yeah.
And bearing in mind, Deputy Mayor, of course, that's beyond the purview of the Hamilton Gardens
Oh,
management
no.
plan, so that would be
I'm just saying that if we
staff.
lock it into the gardens for, you know, as part of this plan, I just want to know before we do that what were the options. Can we also have some reference about how, you know, the criticism that this is part of a farm, you know, the garden surrounding versus the historical context and integrity of the house? And again, it's just the submissions that are made this morning. I'll be interested.
Well, the garden surrounding would be in the period of the house. Yeah. And there's an old-fashioned orchard adjacent to that with old-fashioned fruit trees. Yeah. So it would have quite a sympathetic seating.
Yeah. I guess you're going around the table, so could I ask another question then?
So just to be clear, questions of the report, and then any information you want fed to the deliberations reports. So you've popped a couple of those things.
Obviously, I still retain that interest and curiosity around the link to the Glenview. So what I want clearly is reminding us of the history and the exact footprint that council owns adjacent to the Glenview Club area across the river. I think, and it may be that all it is that we make some reference to keeping that as a greenscape that is sympathetic with the gardens. There has been discussion of potential pedestrian bridge development there. I don't know, but I'd be interested in just, getting my head around that if we could. And then obviously just picking up the festival, just remind us again, at the point at which the rhododendron lawn goes, just remind us again, how the festival evolved, in terms of where are the good spaces.
Well, the land on the other side, I think it's not obviously not covered by the management plan, but you're absolutely right. It is crucial to protect that view from having a whole line of residential development looking right into the gardens. It would certainly compromise them. So it is important to preserve some of that open space.
Well, and I think we need to, because that, to me, we need to do an eyes open. What I'd be fearful of is a future council makes some utterly separate decision around the Glenview land with no reference back, and I think it would be really good to reference personally, not necessarily in the management plan, but certainly as a trigger that you can't discuss any development around the Glenview Club unless you're cognisant of the gardens. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor Mungai. James?
My question is around I suppose, the cultural consideration in that context. And to help me frame sort of my thoughts and questions, there's that Waikato tainui whakatauki around ko taupiri te manga, ko Waikato te awa, ko potatau te tangata, he piko he taniwha, he piko he taniwha, Waikato taniwhara, which loosely is our connection from Taupiri Maunga, Waikato River, potatau te tangata, our chief, and then at each bend there's a chief, there's a flourishing community, and there's 100 of those along the Waikato River. So my question is just, because Te Parapara Pā is within an active reserve management plan, and just north of Te Parapara is 3 other pā, just quite close, which is Te Nihi Nihi Pā by Cobham Bridge, then on Yandul is Te Kaurahi, and then Te Rapa, and then Graham's Garden, I can't remember the name of that one, and just south at Hammond Park. So where I'm going with this is that there's this connectivity between these other pā with Te Parapara, and how, and again, talking about the active reserve, that there's this active reserve management plan happening, that the cultural application or cultural values can be expressed because there's this active draft management plan or Hamilton Gardens plan. So again, not forgetting about the other ones, but those other ones are closely associated with Te Parapara, which is at Hamilton Gardens. So where I'm going with this is the ability for Waikato tainui and mana whenua hapu to express themselves at Hamilton Gardens because there's no active enablement at the others because of the reserve management plan doesn't enable that. So yeah, I just thought, is that part of the cultural consideration in developing the plan?
Yes, so we have had some, and actually as recently as last week, had a very, very productive meeting with mana whenua representatives, and we had previously met with Waikato tainui and Thorpe earlier as well. Unfortunately, the Waikato tainui representative wasn't at last week's meeting, but the discussion there was around, specifically around the ways in which we partner with mana whenua to appropriately recognise the history, the present and the future of and their connection to the site, and ways in which that site, being the gardens, can give some expression to their aspirations as a people, and active expression of their values. So we had a really great conversation around manaakitanga, and in fact the idea that the gardens being a kind of a showcase of the world gardens, that actually it's mana whenua and iwi that are hosting the world in our place at the Waikato, at the Hamilton Gardens, to the extent that Peter got so excited that he went back and developed a native border, because we talk in the management plan about reducing and increasing native flora and fauna, so that effectively there was this concept of the kite, the basket, and the fact that the world's held, if you like, within the gardens of mana whenua at the gardens. And I think the enthusiasm was shared across the table, and we've committed to ongoing conversations on a regular basis to talk through, because they're matters of significance. We agreed that it would be premature to try and finalise something concrete to put in here. What we agreed with elected members' permission is certainly what staff want to bring back as amended wording in the plan that recognises that there is a clear commitment to finding a way to express the things I've just discussed, and that those developments would be developed in partnership, active partnership with mana whenua and iwi. So we talked a little bit about locations. There are lots of different ideas. We talked about symbolic representation. There were quite a few ideas. We talked about that kind of event, cultural activity, things that would give real life and meaning to what it means to mana whenua on that site. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to those conversations if the plan's approved, because I think we're going to do some really awesome things together.
Cool. No, thank you for that.
And sorry, and to your further point about the sites outside the footprint of the management plan, we also talked about opportunities to partner with iwi and mana whenua to reinvigorate the project which is in the river plan, which was to acknowledge sites of significance alongside the Waikato River.
Cool. And I just have one last question, and it was just around, I was like thinking of what Leanne and Craig had presented around the platform of sorts, and the ability for mana whenua Māori to tell Māori stories. And I was just thinking about whether or not there's consideration within the info centre or the visitors facility to enable Māori to have that right around what stories being told about them and their site, and whether or not there is some form of attributing back to who owns that information or that story, that narrative, or the ability for Māori to mana whenua to come in and actually present those stories on behalf of the gardens in terms of partnership in that sense. But I just thought, just in terms of flagging some thoughts around that cultural consideration around that IP, I suppose, if you call it that.
Oh, absolutely, and that was part of the conversation we had, that this is their story to tell. The idea of partnership is that they sufficiently understand the story of the gardens, and we sufficiently understand the stories that are important to them, that we can make sure that there's a nice, cohesive, sympathetic mix. But certainly we talked about the info centre and various sites that everyone walks past as they come in. And these aren't either ors either, these were and. Yeah.
Thank you, Mangai James. Councillor Pascoe.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Look, my questions are around Laura's submission, and I know it may be a little bit off point, but I think there are opportunities for the gardens in this. And I think she highlighted a bit of a mishmash over where we record our heritage and historical sites, and I wonder if this is an opportunity not only for the gardens but also for the city to somehow pull those out of the different silos. And this may be a question of the General Manager rather than you, to pull these out of the different silos that they're in, and maybe it's a task for the next council to do this so that we can identify these sites. I recall in the last term the Frankton Neighbourhood Plan and the Hamilton East Neighbourhood Plan identified a number of those sites, but those plans seem to have gone into ether in this term. But I wonder if it's an opportunity now to try and highlight those, see where there might be opportunities for Hamilton Gardens, but where we can't move those to Hamilton Gardens, there may be an opportunity to develop sites that that can complement the gardens as a visitor venue, as a visitor, as a visitor destination. We could also have these other destinations around the city, but it may be a matter of bringing together some of that history and those historical sites.
I think what we need to do is probably for the incoming council as part of the forerunner to working up to the long-term plan is actually, I think you've brought up some good points, and we have a lot of information, like you say, in different departments and different management plans and district plan and all that sort of thing, and heritage plans and neighbourhood plans, etc. So I'd say actually probably talking to council about what are the opportunities about what we can do in A, pulling that information together, B, actually what are some proactive things we can do on the ground, and then what's the appetite for council and other partners to actually then resource that. And my view is just going on from what Mangai James has talked about before, is I think there's a real opportunity to work with Mana Whenua and iwi around telling more of those stories. I think we've done a bit of that. I think we could do a lot more. I think there's some opportunities for probably some partnership resourcing, not only from those sources, from council sources, but others. So I think, and then you get into wider cultural heritage. I think there's some real opportunities there as well. But obviously that could be, how long's a piece of string? And I think the prudent thing to do would be to come back to council about what are the opportunities, and then what's the appetite of council, and then we can synthesise that down into something that's manageable, and then obviously council would have to tick off on that going forward as a work program.
It's urgent, but it may be part of a 10 or 20-year plan to try and, but first of all, it seems to me we've got to identify where these are in the different silos, and kind of bring it together so that we've got a little bit of a plan that identifies where what we could do, and I agree, Lance, it may be a question of who helps fund it too.
Yeah, and I think an opportunity, I don't want to get off track, but we've been talking to the university and to Wintec about having some university graduates. We've had a Tainui graduate work in the Parks Department last summer and last spring. For 6 months, and so I think there's some real opportunities to do that in a reasonably cost-effective way, and also in a way where a person or another organisation gets some benefit from it as well.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. Councillor McPherson?
Yeah, thanks. I think I saw some of the plans, James, that Rob was mentioning outside on the coffee table there.
Still gathering dust.
Yeah, in the pile somewhere. Hey, look, and I agree with what Rob's raised, but also Martin and James raised similar issues about the connection of the gardens to other parts of the city, and I don't think the final report, while the expenditure may be geographically confined, the words and the links need to be wider than just these. I mean, the fact that Te Parapara Pa site has links with 4 other nearby Pas is not something that you say, oh, that's not in the area of the gardens, so it doesn't sort of get mentioned. Those Pa did not exist in isolation from each other, and nor should they be in this plan. And we may have to identify almost like one of those diagrams where there are overlapping plans. And the same goes for the heritage issues with the Frankton. If we did have it there, how does it get linked back to the area it came from? And is that, where do we decide whether that's the best place for it? Martin's point also about the Glenview Club site, I think it is, I would like to see a sort of rather than a hard boundary, a bit like one of the general manager's green donuts, the sort of shaded area around the outside of influence, if you like, of the gardens. Clearly, the Glenview Club area across the river, it has high potential importance to the gardens, and the gardens plan should identify that and make sure, as Martin suggested, that we don't have inadvertent wrong developments that work against the gardens in the long run. Same probably for the cemetery area as well, I think. It would have been helpful actually as a suggestion for this exercise, and certainly for our the final report, to have a map or several maps of the different options or something like that attached to the report. I know we've seen some of them in the past, and maybe the plan itself electronically. If we can have a link to that, would be good also. I had a specific issue about paragraph 19 under cultural considerations, which is on page 6. It says staff have committed to working with Tainui and Te Whenua on an ongoing basis. I just wondered whether that still enabled the plan itself to be tweaked, or is it just, are we just talking about words? It's the sort of issue that was raised that I raised in a question and others did with Glenn and other submitters from the Development Trust. You know, is it possible, for instance, for a different way of expressing Māori cultural issues to come forward as part of those discussions you're talking about in 19? You know, are we locked in to what's going where, or are we open to possible other ways of expressing this?
The latter, we are open to other possible ways of expressing it. So essentially where we got to with the meeting last week was that Thorpe supported the management plan on the following basis, and this is what we agreed, that Council and Thorpe continuing to take a partnership approach to the development of a concept for the gardens, which will appropriately recognise the history, present ongoing significance of the site for mana whenua and allow them to tell their stories, appropriate stories, identifying appropriate sites in the gardens for this work and projects, and ensuring ongoing discussions regarding activities, events at the gardens that represent and reflect tikanga, kawa and law. So for what it's worth, but hopefully it is worth something, staff and Thorpe, I felt, reset our relationship around engagement at the gardens, and we're actually expanding that to discuss partnership approach to the zoo and to the museum as well in the future. So it was a genuine commitment on both sides to really explore the ways in which in the plan we can achieve the things that we've been talking about. So I think it's fair to say that we both agreed that rather than have premature concept that locked us into something that with further discussions might not work for either of us, that recognising in a real way with meaningful words in here the commitment I've just shared with you, that allowed us, and we will set up a series of regular meetings post hopefully approval of the draft management plan, and we'll be able to report back regularly on the form that those conversations are taking. But yeah, there's real commitment on both sides here to do something important. Yeah.
Yep, that's good.
Thanks, Councillor McPherson. Councillor Bunting?
Thanks, Madam Chair. So if we want some information to come back, this is the opportunity? Great, thank you. Cool. Just a couple of questions on some of the written submissions, as well as the verbal ones. There was a one from Richard Porter on cycle parking. I didn't see, I saw cycle ways, but I didn't see any cycle parking. And I was wondering if we could get some information where you'd propose that would go, whether it would be in the car park or...
No, we had some other feedback outside the submissions. We had some other good feedback from open days and things.
Yep.
And where one group would really like it is just if the plan goes ahead, just inside the entranceway, so it's within view of the office. And easy to put a camera on it, so electric bikes that are worth a lot would be as well protected as they could be.
And that's doable?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, great. Good to see. Okay, all right, well, yeah, if I could see something on that would be great. Thank you. So the gum tree, Dan Benfield, who's our own tree guy, was pretty passionate about it, but it's staying, is it?
Yeah. Yes, the gum tree staying as long as it's safe.
Right.
Gum trees last 60 to 70 years. We think that's getting on for 70 as best as we can tell.
Yeah.
People who were here 50 years ago, it was a big tree then. So we get it assessed by an arborist every year. At some point, probably they'll tell us it's unsafe, and then health and safety will come first.
Yeah, okay.
So it's probably, I think someone said, it's probably likely in the next 2 or 3 years. Already, look at it, it already shows signs of senescence.
Is that?
But the whole plan isn't trying to get rid of the white gum. It's there as long as it wants to be.
No, that's good.
I love it, yeah.
No, thank you, and thanks for pointing that out in the report, Leanne, I appreciate it. The car park, Darren Mills's presentation, I was disappointed he wasn't here, actually, I was going to ask him about it. The car park sinking, he mentions it in his report, you know, where it is existing. Have we got any geologist report that say that, or is it just kind of a...
Oh, you can see it from the drainage. It's got a very shallow drainage into Turtle Lake.
Right.
And because it's almost the same height as Turtle Lake, if you go down there in wet weather, it's flooding.
Okay.
So just the...
All right.
And it is over the old dump site.
Yeah, okay. Could I please see some more information on that?
Yep.
Thank you.
Even just looking at the site, you can see some areas go up and then a catch pit sort of gets left up high. So it's not draining properly. It's, you know, you can see it on site where...
Yeah.
Can I, if I may, can I just clarify your question?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
More information, so given that the plan proposes to move the car park.
Yes.
You want to see more information about what currently happens or what would need to be done to retain
Yeah, if the
that
car
as a
park, if the car park had to stay, what would be required? If it stayed where it was?
Yeah, we did get some advice. We had a really good workshop, a full-day workshop with ACOM engineers.
Yeah.
And a lot of advice from that. We're getting some follow-up advice from that. It would really need a complete rebuild.
Yeah, okay, cool. Thank you. I was interested too in Graham's sound assessment. They were quite differing sound assessments from Virginia's and the likes. Do we have any... have we done any sound testing on the Governor's Lawn?
We haven't, and the earthworks isn't finished yet.
Yeah,
the earth is coming from the current Gardens development site, and if you know, there were huge piles of fill material there.
Yeah.
So it was economic to use it on site, and it's fortunate that it can create that sound barrier, and it has made a huge difference. If you can go down there yourself, and there's more to come. I might point out that the festival's been going 22 years, and most festival directors wanted us to develop an amphitheatre at the bottom of what's called the farm garden. So the plan includes that, and that was sort of, because this discussion has gone on for decades or more.
Right.
So part of the plan was to create the amphitheatre for the concerts.
Would that have the capacity that he was talking about for his big events, though?
It'd have bigger capacity, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's good. Okay, alrighty. Jenny Fraser had a question regards the cafe and the potential of some veranda type stuff down there. Where are you at with that at the moment?
Yeah, we had a discussion last week with them, and we're ongoing talking about that. But we think it's valuable to keep some outdoor areas with umbrellas. Nice days, people prefer to eat outside rather than having it totally filled in. Right. So there is space where the cafe could expand, and where we can have more outdoor terraced eating. And I could show you a plan on that too.
That'd be good. Yeah, thank you.
Sorry, Councillor Martin, can I just, we just need to be just a little careful about solving things here, because if we sort of solve things here, we're deliberating, and I don't want.
I just want to see some more information.
Yeah. So just as long as we just stick with that, because if we sort of start solving some things here and we're not asking that in the deliberations meeting, then we've been a bit unfair. So
thank you.
Just actually caution to everyone.
No, good stuff. And final one is regards the jetty, the proposed new jetty. Is you're comfortable that people can get to it and from it easily enough? Where it's proposed in the plan down here?
Oh, that was just an alternative possible jetty. I think there's another committee looking at options around that. But the part of that was the solution to behaviour problems.
Right.
And if everyone is entering the theme gardens through the visitor centre, I think that will modify behaviour.
So you're suggesting that if they were going to leap off that one, they'd go through the theme gardens and down. Is that right?
Well, I think it will be more effective in addressing that behaviour problem. And personally, I think wait and see what happens with that rather than, because a new jetty with the access is probably over $1 million.
Yeah, okay. Alrighty. No, that's me. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, look, I'd like to get a bit more information back on this issue with Governor's Green that has been raised, and it's a significant objection from a significant user of the gardens. I don't find myself convinced from what you were just saying to Councillor Bunting about the whole sound issue at Governor's Green, and is this going to be designed to mitigate the sound issues that have been raised? And if not, should we be looking at these alternative plans for a car park that have been suggested?
The alternative site for the car park doesn't address any of the issues. It doesn't achieve anything.
Okay, what about the
because
soundproofing?
it still doesn't have a link to Gate 1. We're proposing, if the festival survives, that the main performance area is the amphitheatre. And that's well away from Cobham Drive. That wouldn't have a sound problem. And that's been, over the years, that's been the preferred site of the festival organisers.
And can I get some assurance that that's been discussed recently with the festival?
We have had a discussion with some members of the Trust, including Graham.
And what's their reaction to that?
Well, obviously he disagrees. That's why he's here today.
So we haven't got a resolution then?
Well, keeping the rhododendron lawn means destroying the whole plan, because it depends, having that other access way, the whole thing depends on that.
Okay, so we haven't got a resolution. We've got a significant issue then.
If I may, and understanding that we're not trying to answer your questions here, but for context, there are always going to be some tensions between users. So what Peter's described, just so you understand, what Peter's trying to be clear about when he references the car park, is the car park design is to allow in and out access at 2 points to prevent the significant traffic management issues and the traffic snarls up that we have on State Highway 1. So when Peter referred to the alternative site that Graham mentioned for the car park, it's in order for it to not be reliant on in and out through Gate 1 only, it still needs that access way through. So that's one issue. The second issue, of course, is the point about where an appropriate event space is. So we'll bring information back that cover off the two, because I think if we conflate them, then they are two separate issues and may have to be considered, and you may in the balance have to consider them and prioritise them separately. But we will bring information back on alternative amphitheatre, alternative sites and evidence of the pros and cons in terms of the users, and how the car parks work relative to those sites.
Okay. All right. So that will include this issue of Governor's Green, that the soundproofing, if it's going to be suitable here, because I mean to me it's pretty significant. Thank you. The couple of issues raised by submitters, which are perhaps peripheral to the actual management plan, but I guess I want to know where they're going to be picked up in terms of staff work. And one is that issue of covered seating at the cafe, that has, or lack of covered seating, which was raised by the cafe in terms of being too hot for patrons. And of course, you know, the cafe it's an integral part of what's going on here, so it needs to be operating as well as possible. So I'm keen for that to be addressed somewhere. Safety issues were raised by one or two submitters, and again, we've had a rash of crime at the gardens for months and months and more longer than that, and I never seem to hear anything about it. And so I'm keen to see where are we going to have issues such as lighting, security cameras, all these things addressed. Is it going to be part of this, or will it be other staff work coming back to community services? Because you know, I keep hearing about it week after week after week, but I don't seem to see any actions or response to it. So that's pretty much it.
Yeah, we've had 6 security incidents recorded that have been reported to us. So if people don't tell us,
well, I could add a 0 to that.
Yeah, well.
So in terms of the
60.
report, we will provide. I think what you're asking for us to do is effectively an overlay over the plan that indicates how we keep our patrons as safe as we possibly can. And I can also reassure you, Councillor Taylor, that separately through our BAU operational, in light of the last ones that I've become aware of, I'm currently reviewing security camera and other access at the gardens as they currently exist.
Thanks, Leanne. Where will that come back to, and when?
Well, that's for discussion. I need to talk to Lance about that, but if it's of interest to Community and Services Committee, it certainly could come back in some form of report to that body. or however else elected members want to, or executive
Most of
state
it's a
or
budget
something like
issue,
that.
so it'll come back to a committee and then potentially to the annual plan or to the finance committee.
Great, thank you. That's great, thank you. And I'm not, this issue of Waikato Tainui wanting some performance space or space, has that been addressed? Is that something you're going to address when you come back with your deliberations report?
Yes, we fully intend, we've obviously read the submissions with great interest and through our conversations we will bring back to you options that address or in our expert view of the contrary. But the gardens plan as it currently exists provides for spaces that could be actively used now. Over and above that, I think what we're hearing submitters say is that they want a bit more infrastructure that allows for those events. And again, provided that the wording that I just read out before about making sure that iwi and mana whenua can continue to be engaged through events and activities that allow them to perform kawa, the law, and express their tikanga, that wording in the plan that would allow for those places to be further developed as well. So it doesn't lock us out of it. The plan as it currently exists doesn't lock it out, and we're going to strengthen it by adding in a commitment that we will do what we can in partnership with them to make sure that those performance and storytelling spaces are there.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Chair.
We heard this morning about the noise berm to reduce the noise from Cobham Drive. Next year, hopefully, Cobham Drive will become a local road because the expressway will be open, which hopefully will remove a lot of the heavy motor vehicle stuff, which is not, with no business in the city, will probably travel straight past the city. I would guess. The new car park, I read, it's going to provide for approximately 40 extra cars. Is that correct?
Not just that car park, in the overall area there was, yeah.
Oh, okay.
It wasn't that we needed a lot more parking. The problem at the moment is that everyone's coming in gate 1, and even at the peak times we still have empty car parks from gate 2.
So we'll get a flow system going.
Yeah,
in
making
one
better
and
use
out
of the
other.
parking we've got.
Okay. So that'll make it a lot safer too if it's left in and left out too, won't it? It will. Okay. Has any thought to encourage overnight stayers in the city and that, and security issues and these type of things, has any thought been given to having part of that car park as an overnight camper van park?
Councillor Tooman, sorry, we are edging into deliberations. Those
Yeah,
are the
just
kinds of
wondering if
questions
this
you
could
need,
actually
unless
be
you
looked
want
at.
some information brought back in the report on that.
If we could have that
Yeah.
as the possibility for an overnight camper van car park and part of the car park, which would increase your security with lighting and that type of thing.
Councillor Tooman, sorry to interrupt. Is that in a submission though? Or is
No,
that-
it's just what I
It's
thought.
just what you thought? Well, yeah, we probably can't do that.
Okay.
We do need to respond to what submissions in this step of the process. Yeah, good try. Mayor Andrew.
Peter, thank you for all you've done for the gardens for a long time. I have a lot of faith in you and what you've achieved and what your vision going forward. Leanne, I believe some of the things you're saying today around Māori partnership and talking with them is a big step forward, so thanks for that. So Manga James brought up the IP of the storytelling, and I think that's critical. And can we, who owns the IP for the storytelling, iwi or not? And I think that needs to be addressed, and I'd like to see that come back as part of the report. I was a little concerned with the staff reports, which is talking about having one meeting with Thorpe in November last year, and then having another meeting on the 15th of August, which is about a week ago, which probably was after this was printed. That didn't seem like partnership to me. That just seemed like I'm a little concerned about that. And I want to know whether you feel that you have, as part of the report coming back, whether there has been proper partnership consultation with iwi to get us to this point. I'm also concerned in the staff report where it talks about once the plan's implemented, we'll include iwi in talks going forward. Well, so I just want to, I want you to address that as well, as to why partnership discussions with iwi seem to be so sparse and so late, and the comment in the report about basically once the plan's implemented, we'll then be talking with iwi. Well, I want to know what's going to happen beforehand and what their desires and wishes are for the area. So that can be included in your report, just to tidy those things up. So I don't need answers now. I need those in the report.
I know, but I feel in order to able to act on your question, I do need to ask a question, if I may, through the chair. So Mayor Andrew, you raised a number of points in there.
Just one more point is it appears from what you said earlier you didn't talk to Tainui on the 15th, as it says in the report.
No, because as you point out, this report was written before. So I think bluntly, I'm not going, as the new visitor destinations manager, I'm not going to sit here and argue that consultation over the management plan was completely optimal. As you know, it's not always easy to get groups of people together, so unless you have a plan and a number of contingency dates and things like that, it can be very hard to get together. What I will say, though, is that meeting on the 15th of August and the previous meeting that we had with Waikato Tainui that Muna hosted at our request were very productive meetings.
Were Tainui at that meeting on the 15th?
Yes, it was. No, not on the 15th, but the meeting, I should have put the date in, but possibly 4 weeks earlier than that we had with Waikato Tainui. After or around the time that they put their submission in, was also very productive. And as a consequence of that, we have a point person within Wikitoria who now is going to be our liaison person. And so this is just by way of explanation, because the context, we have reset, Mayor Andrew. I think that's the message I'd like council elected members to hear. We have reset. So some of the information that you were then asking for us in terms of their aspirations for the plan, we can, in the report, record that at a general level, but it is their wish as well as ours that we have detailed conversations about the best way to achieve their aspirations, and that is what we have committed to. And staff's recommendation to you will be that there's a commentary throughout the management plan that indicates that that commitment is real and it will be acted on.
Okay, that's good to hear, and I appreciate your expertise in these fields, Leanne. So I just want some feedback on the gardens being Rupati land, if I pronounce that properly, Councillor Mongai James?
Rapatu.
Sorry? Rapatu. And just the significance of that, what that means. They're asking, Tainui are asking for governance and management partnership with us, so I just want that reported in the feedback. Waikato Tainui have suggested that this would be an opportunity to return some of the gardens to Tainui, so I just want some feedback on that, which is in their submission. They have also specifically asked in their submission for a cultural space, Māori-led cultural hub in the gardens, and I just need some feedback on where that would be, so they've asked for that to be included in as part of the management plan in their submission. They're also talking about the significance, of course, of it having been a PAR site. They're specifically asking for a Māori tourism venture to be included in the management plan. So I want some feedback on that. They've specifically said in their plan that this could, and have referenced Tainui Waka Tourism as being the people that could manage that on behalf of Waikato Tainui. And so from there I'll go to the Tainui Waikato Tourism submission, because the two of them are linked by reference to each other, or reference from Tainui to this one, and they've again asked for a Māori arts cultural hub, and with, again, I just want to bring reference to the tourism side, so they want this included in the plan, not to be talked about after the plan's been settled. They've asked, and they, when you go to the Tainui Waikato Tourism report, they're asking that the terraced areas not be developed because they feel that that has cultural significance. They're also asking for the place where they would like their tourism venture to be where they could store waka, where they could beach waka, and where they can have views over the river and be close to where the action is. So I just need some feedback on that when we come back, and specifically where you consider on the plan that this could be put, because there is no reference on the plan that we're looking at to this at the moment. So they've been very specific in their submission, and these are questions which appear not to have been drilled down on. Certainly we've had no report back here in the staff report today, so there hasn't been consideration given by staff at this stage to these questions in the report that we've been given. I'm not saying you're not talking.
But it's not the process either, Mary.
No, so I just need these to come back in the deliberations report, these questions that they've asked. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Look, I think most of the queries I had, I didn't see any submission directly from a stakeholder in the disability sector. Did we have any? And sort of, I appreciate Leanne, your comments around, you know, timeframes and everything. You can't get to everybody, but did they? I didn't see anything. So, did we have any direct chats with them?
They're certainly made aware of it, and we
Yeah.
recently were audited and got feedback.
Yeah. All right. Okay.
Can I just say, without obviously telling our team to suck eggs, we do have on our staff a very significant member of our staff.
In our group.
So obviously, what we want, I think, is just assured that we don't miss anything, you know, particularly in that area. Thank you.
Thank you for gently mansplaining my position to me. Deputy Mayor, I know you did it with as much love as possible.
You know what mansplaining means?
No, I say that with love, but I was, yes. What he said. I say that with love, Deputy Mayor. I know you picked up on the security. You'll bring back some information on what, I appreciate what the General Manager said around security being a resource issue in terms of addressing some of the issues that we're having there now, but I would like to see some commentary around how it overlays in the future plans. I think you picked that up. I think everything else was picked up by other members. Yes, it has. Yeah, everything else is on the list already, so thank you for that. Okay, so committee members, we are, again, we're not to deliberate, we know that. We're back onto page 5, There's a staff recommendation there that we receive the report, hears and considers public submissions to the plan. We've done that. Notes the deliberation approval report for the draft plan will be presented, can I just add the date, to the 17th of September 2019 council meeting based on the results of this hearing. So I will move that the staff recommendation, seconded by Councillor McPherson. Would anybody like to debate? No? All those in favour? Any against? That's carried. Thank you very much for taking the time to come in and present your report. Now, committee members, we will adjourn till, and we'll be moving into committee room 1 just for the day-to-day stuff that our committee does. Yeah, we will do a... When's our next person up speaking? Can we go to 1 o'clock? Okay, 1 o'clock. Is that in the parking restriction changes? Is that there's someone coming to speak at 1? Oh, there's 5 people coming, Dave. So 1. So we're going to do that, and then we're going to go to Tasman Road. Do you want us to message you when we're Tasman Road? Yeah. Tasman Road one. There's no speakers to Tasman Road? No. So 5 speakers coming at 1, yeah. Well, I mean, people need a break, so if we went till 12:30, yeah. Dave, what time do you need to go? Because we could, okay, all right. Okay. Yeah, okay. Are you sure? Okay. All right, so we're back in committee room 1 at 12. Oh, we don't have submitters till 1, so we can't really, we can still start, well, gosh. Well, I was going to suggest if we started at 12:30, we can do Tasman. We won't get it finished in half an hour, though. Well, we've got 5 people wishing to speak, and we've given them time, so we need to. For Tasman Road? No, not for Tasman Road. For the business as usual stuff, parking restrictions. So can Tasman Road come in front? We won't get it finished in time. Well, that's what I was just thinking about. If we started we could start Tasman at 12:30, then adjourn it at 1, and then pick it up after. 12:30 in committee room 1. Yeah, I don't know. 12:30 in committee room 1, starting with Tasman Road. So actually, I'm not going to hang around. I'm not going to...